Well, another week and another two council by-elections to get into. Only two this week again. We're slim pickings at the start of 2026, I'm afraid. But look, two very surprising results, and two that I certainly didn't have on my bingo card. If you watched the video last week when I was going through this week's video, this week's elections, I didn't see either of these results happening. So let's get straight into them because it is very, very interesting. North Somerset Council's where we start, then Clevedon South Ward, and Labour were defending, and Labour, very surprisingly these days, managed to hold on. Only just, though. So last time out, it was just the two of them, Conservatives versus Labour. It's a straight shootout, the two of them. Labour, last time out, they got 54% of the votes, and then obviously the Conservatives picked up the remaining 45-ish percent. And obviously we were expecting both of those two to see vote share declines, based purely on the fact that there was more people on the ballot paper. That was naturally going to happen. So the Labour Party lost 25 points off of their vote share. That's in line with what we're expecting to see. I've said in multiple videos now, expecting in May for Labour to be losing 20 points on average in their wards that they're defending. I actually think the more weeks go by, I think that's maybe a conservative estimate. Actually, it may well be more than that. But on average at the moment, I'm saying 20 points down, and that's what we've seen here. So that's in line. The Conservatives down 27 points to 18.6% of the vote. And look, I have to say it, Labour in the point, I know, but it's still kind of a bit of a trend on the internet at the moment, or on X at least, of this idea that the Conservatives are on a comeback. And I'm sorry, but it's not happening, is it? It's entirely fake. It's not there. We've seen it in these election results that we look at on this channel. There is no Conservative surge that we see in actual voting. Yes, the opinion polls have shown them ticking up, I think, 2 points over about 3 months between October and January. So 3 or 4 months, but they're on their way back down again now. A lot of polls have had them ticking down 1 or 2 points. And more importantly, these real elections that we cover on this channel, we're just not seeing it, and we're seeing the complete opposite. We are seeing Conservative vote share declines consistently, and in this one, and in others, but in this case this week, pretty bad vote share decline. 27 points down is nothing to be sniffed at. That is quite poor. So yeah, look, that Conservative revival is not happening. As far as we can tell on this channel, it seems very much fake to me. So I would not believe it. Like I said in the first week of our January by-election roundups, don't believe it. When we start seeing it on this channel, then we'll give it some credence. But until then, absolutely not having it. Reform are the surprise package once again. I didn't really have them down to do all that well in this ward this week. I think some of you said in the comments last week, don't write them off. I'm pretty sure I read a couple of comments saying Reform may well do well, and they did. They got 28% of the vote, there or thereabouts, and they finished only 1.3 points behind Labour, so it was really close, 16 votes in it. And look, this goes to show these council elections in particular can be really, really close. So if you are in a place that is holding elections in May, even if you're not, if they're cancelled at the moment, they could still be on. Make sure you're registered to vote, and make sure you go out and vote, because you really genuinely can make a difference in these council elections where they quite often come down to close results like this. It happens far more often at this council level than it does at the national level. So make sure you go out and vote for whoever you want. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but vote for what you want, because you can make a genuine difference. So Reform came very, very close, but didn't quite manage it. Now, look, if you watched the video last week, you know I thought the Greens and the Liberal Democrats would be the ones to challenge Labour here. I thought Labour would lose, so I'm very surprised they held on in the first place. But yeah, I thought the Greens and the Liberal Democrats would be the ones to watch. The Greens, they got 16 points, so not great, and the Liberal Democrats got 8 points, even worse. So interesting. Look, clearly I didn't look into any detail of the demographics of this ward or anything like that. The council itself, North Somerset Council, is the Conservatives have the largest representation on the council. They've got 13 seats, I believe, and but they're not in control of the council because there's a coalition of Labour, Lib Dem, Green, and Independent / others who run the council. So look, all of those parties do quite well in North Somerset. That's why I thought it would be a Green or a Lib Dem to make the gain off of Labour. As it happens, Labour didn't lose anyway, and Reform were actually the biggest gainers in this ward. So very interesting. Unfortunately, no turnout data for us on that one. So Labour hold on in Clevedon South, North Somerset. On to the second one, and this one's very, very interesting. Anas Gubby, I think is how you pronounce it. I do apologise again. Ynys Mon, which I believe to English speakers is what we just call Anglesey, the Isle of Anglesey. So it's a Plaid Cymru defence. And what's important here is that this is very much Plaid Cymru Heartland territory. I believe this is the seat of the Plaid Cymru leader. I'm not sure if that's in Westminster or in the Senedd, but I saw somebody say this is Plaid's leader's seat, is where this council is, and they lost. And they lost to Reform, which is very, very interesting. Now, if you watched the video last week, you'll know all the parties that stood last time. There was 4 of them, and they all got between 20 and 30%. It was another one that was very, very close previously. I thought Plaid here would just stomp through to a victory. I thought they would get 50% of the vote, double their vote share from last time, and run away with it. Not so. Plaid lost 4 points off their vote share. They were down to 25% of the vote, and Reform, from nowhere, coming at 44% of the vote, which is an extraordinary result for them in Plaid Cymru's backyard. You know, this is in their heartland territory. Now, look, we have to put the caveat in. This is one ward in one Welsh local council. It's not necessarily a weather vane or a barometer for what's going to happen in May, but it does colour our thinking a little bit. Now, the last time I looked at the election maps Senedd nowcast, almost the entirety of Wales is now coloured in Plaid Cymru dark green. They've got Plaid 12 points ahead in the polls of Reform and almost forming a majority in their own right. Well, I think this colours that a little bit. I don't think Plaid are that far ahead if this is happening in their backyard. Now, obviously, like I say, there are caveats to that. And I'm not saying that Reform are going to win the Ynys Mon area in May, but look, Reform it's going to be between Reform and Plaid. We know that. The polls, or the polls certainly that Election Maps is using, has suggested that Reform have stretched out a lead and Reform have fallen away. Perhaps not. Look, there's also, on the other side of the coin, to be balanced, there is the Caerphilly result, which Reform were the favourites to win and end up losing, obviously, to Plaid. So, but that was first past the post. There is no tactical voting in the D'Hondt system that's going to be in use for Wales this year. So, look, Reform are going to do well in Wales either way. Labour are going to collapse. The Tories are probably going to collapse, even though they haven't got much anyway. And look, let's just wait and see. Wales are going to be very, very interesting. And this result could point us to look at Reform doing perhaps even better than some of us think they might do anyway. So, very interesting result there. They're the only two really to speak about. Labour were down 11 points, which isn't the biggest vote share decline, but they didn't have too much to start with. Quite impressive for them, I think, to get double figures, actually, in all fairness. But yeah, so a big result for Reform there. A huge win for Reform, like I say, very much in Plaid Cymru Heartland territory. So that is this week's 2 by-elections that we needed to look at. We'll now have a quick look at next week. Right, just before we get into these then, just a little plug, sorry, but if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We do this every week, every Friday or Saturday, depending on when I have work. We look at these by-elections that happen across England, Wales and Scotland. And look, it's very interesting. Long-time viewers of the channel will tell you in the comments. It's some really interesting stuff. I think we get a better insight of the political temperature looking at these week in, week out than we do following opinion polls. So, yeah, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Like the video as well, of course, that helps. And get involved in the comments if you're new to the channel. I love you guys getting involved because there's always somebody who's local to one of these areas that gives some really special insights as well. So do get involved. So next week, we're back in Wales again, Pembrokeshire, Fishguard North East. And again, it's one of these wards where previously it was only contested by 2 parties, Labour and Conservative. So it was a straight shootout. Labour won it with 59% of the vote, with the Conservatives picking up the other 40% or so, obviously, because there's only 2 of them there. But this time, as you can see, quite a different story. There's going to be far more people on the ballot paper. We've got Plaid coming in, the Liberal Democrats, 2 independents and Reform. So, again, those 2 vote shares for Labour and Conservatives are going to drop quite significantly, based purely off the fact there's more competition for votes, I would think. And look, this could be one of those that is a big, big vote share drop for the Labour Party and potentially for the Conservatives as well. These 2 could just fade away to 4th and 5th, potentially. Again, look, we just seen what Reform did in Plaid Cymru's backyard. I think Reform have a pretty good chance of winning this one. But let's see what Plaid do. You know, like I say, this is a head-to-head battle in Wales next year between Reform and Plaid. So let's see where those two come. I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up being first and second, although I'm not sure Pembrokeshire is necessarily a Plaid-friendly area of Wales. And look, we saw actually a couple of weeks ago in the Flintshire, there was an election in Flintshire, Plaid didn't even stand, which is interesting, whereas Reform are happy to go and stand in areas where most people think maybe they're not going to stand a chance, like Ynys Môn. So yeah, interesting one next week in Wales. Keep an eye on that. Worth Valley in Bradford is the next one, and this will be interesting. It's a Conservative defence in Bradford. They got 56% of the vote last time out. Let's see how that holds up. Look, if the Conservative revival is real, if it's, you know, just lagging the opinion poll somewhat, then they're going to have to start by defending seats they've actually held. And they have done that, in all fairness, in 2026. They did defend a couple, or three, didn't they? Week before last, they had a pretty good night defending seats. So if they can do it again, that would be good for them. But I wonder, with this one, if you watched my Yorkshire preview video that I did a few weeks ago, we looked at how the Conservatives had done quite well previously in these more rural areas of Bradford. I don't know if Worth Valley is one of them. I assume it is one of these more rural countryside areas that comes into this council. And if it is, how the Green Party have sort of started elbowing in on that Conservative territory. And we looked at some of the demographics, that these areas tend to be people living in quite big houses relative to the area, sort of 4 bedrooms plus. So wealthy, middle class, wealthy people. And they tend to be very heavily white populated. 98% we saw in some of these places, 98% white population. And we've seen them going to the Greens, which is very interesting. And like I say, I appreciate it's a bit of an offensive way to say it, but I think this is quite comfortable people in terms of wealth, comfortable in their lives and livelihoods, unaffected by mass immigration and by asylum seekers and all these things. And they get to vote for things that make them feel good, but they don't necessarily feel the repercussions of them. So it'll be interested to see if the Greens muscle in on the Conservatives here. They only got 8% of the vote last time. They've got a lot of ground to make up if they're going to win the seat. But the Greens have been on some crazy manoeuvres recently, although I do think some of the hype has been slightly overdone. So I'll keep an eye on that one. Obviously, again, Reform standing. You can't write Reform off anywhere. I say this every week for this exact reason that we saw this week. Reform can win in areas that people just don't see them winning. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on what Reform do as well. Woodston Ward in Peterborough. And lastly, next week, then, it's Fletton and Woodston Ward in Peterborough. Labour defending. They got 48% of the vote last time. Look, factor in that 20% average vote share decline we're expecting to see, and you're looking at 28%. Very difficult to win on 28%, although not uncommon these days. In fact, this week in North Somerset, they won with 29% of the vote, so they can do it, but it requires the vote being split elsewhere. The Conservatives came in second with 33%. Let's see what happens to that vote. Does it go up? Does it go down? And if it goes down, by how much? And that'll inform us a bit again about, is this Conservative revival got anything to it at all, or is it entirely fake? And look, again, we can't write off Reform. They're doing very well across the country, standing here as they tend to stand everywhere these days. That'll be an interesting one to look at as well. Interestingly, I think, if I remember rightly, Peterborough's got quite a heavy local party / independent presence on that council, so I'm quite surprised to not see any independents or local people standing here, but there aren't any. It's all just mainstream parties. And again, look, the Greens got a fairly respectable 11% last time. Let's see if that eats into that Labour vote in any significant way, and if another party then can come through and beat Labour. Not sure really who would be the favourite for me in Peterborough. I'm not all that clued up on the area. So if you're local, let me know what you think, who's likely to win in this ward in Peterborough. And that's it. That's the 3 next week. The first one there, Fishguard, North East and Pembrokeshire, that's on the Tuesday. I don't know why some of these end up being on a Tuesday, but that's on the Tuesday evening. And the other 2 that we talked about are on Thursday as usual. So, like I say, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and make sure the notification bell's hit as well, so you don't miss these videos that come out Friday or Saturday looking at these results. This will be a very interesting one again, looking at who comes out on top. Thing I wanted to say before I go is that in the last week or 2, I've started doing YouTube short videos. If you haven't seen them yet, do go and check them out on my channel page. If you have seen them, let me know your feedback in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about them. I'm not I'm very new to it, so it's a bit of an experiment. I'm playing around with editing and stuff, which I'm not particularly good at. So do give me some honest feedback, constructive if you don't mind, please. But go and check them out if you haven't already, and let me know what you'd like to see. I'm essentially doing them as like news videos at the moment because I've tried doing news videos on the main channel as a main video, but they don't tend to do very well. So I'm just sort of putting them into these short minute, 2 minute videos. As a YouTube short. So yeah, do go and check those out and let me know what you think. I'd be greatly appreciative of that. And that's it for this week, guys. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all again next week.